mystery that cannot be explained. An enigma that defies reason. A surprising and unexpected answer. To encounter such a mystery firsthand may change your life forever. Face to face with the greatest riddles of the ages, the world's most profound mysteries reach out and touch your life in ways you never imagined possible. Extreme Mysteries.
For hundreds, no thousands of years, kings and generals, historians and archaeologists, architects and mathematicians have argued over who and how the Great Pyramids were built. Is it possible the answer can be found not in some ancient Egyptian tomb, but in an amazing tourist attraction in modern-day Florida called the Coral Castle? Barely 5 feet tall and weighing slightly less than 100 pounds, a man by the name of Ed Lidskalnin seems to have accomplished the Herculean feat of quarrying, cutting, moving, and raising 1,100 tons of coral rock using only simple tools. Could he have done it by himself? Is it possible that one man, a small man at that, could cut, quarry, and move these massive coral stones by himself? Could it be there is some secret of levitation or anti-gravity known to ancient builders that was rediscovered by Ed Lidskalnin? How could one man cut and set this 9-ton coral gate so precisely that even today a child can move it with one finger? The answer will amaze you. Coral Castle is perhaps America's most intriguing mystery. Like the Great Pyramids of Egypt, it shouldn't be there. But there it is, welcoming visitors every day into its unusual confines and its unbelievable history.
Ed Lidskalnin said he knew the secrets of how the pyramids of Egypt were built, and I believe his claim was accurate.
Did Lidskalnin somehow stumble onto some mechanism known only to ancient architects and use that knowledge to float enormous coral stones into place? Lidskalnin apparently devoted his entire life to this project. Was it a labor of love? Why did he always work alone and at night? What was the great discovery he worked so hard to protect? The epicenter of Coral Castle's mystery is Ed Lidskalnin himself. Who was he? Why did he leave Latvia? And how did he finally end up so far away in Florida? And is there evidence that the story Lidskalnin told visitors about himself and the castle was less than the entire truth?
Ed Lidskalnin was born in Latvia in the year of 1887. There he trained as a cleric and also as a stonemason. In 1912, at the age of 26, he was engaged to his 16-year-old girlfriend Agnes Scoff. The day before the wedding, she decided to call the wedding off, telling Ed that he was poor to marry her. Crushed by this sudden rejection, Ed left Latvia that year, and eventually he wound up in Florida. He constructed the Coral Castle as a future home for him, Agnes, and their children. We please believe it or not, called this Feast of Love table the world's largest Valentine. Ed called this the Grotto of the Three Bears, where the children would play, and he created this repentance corner where their naughty children could be punished. There's a letter from Andrei Stavro, who investigated Ed's life in Latvia. He tells a different story. I met his relatives, found one document and one old photograph of him. In short, Ed's descendants insist that during the 1905 and 1907 uprising, he was an armed guard against the Tsar and left Latvia because of repression of the Tsar's secret police.
If Lidskalnин was keeping a low profile about his past, then can we entirely trust his explanations about how he moved and lifted coral stones weighing up to 30 tons? And why would Lidskalnin keep his actual construction methods secret?
One person who knew Ed remembers asking him how he did it.
Ed always seemed a little vague on just how he attacked the task of moving the huge tonnage of rock, but he told me he understood all the laws of weights and levers.
To explain how he managed to move the huge stones, Ed would always tell people,
I have discovered the secrets of the pyramids. I have found out how the Egyptians and the ancient builders in Peru, Yucatan and Asia, with only primitive tools, raised and set in place blocks of stone weighing many tons.
If we assume that Ed Lidskalnin and the pyramid builders were using the same tools and methods, then based on Ed's abilities, it would have only taken approximately 4,700 workers to build the Great Pyramid, instead of the 20,000 to 100,000 that is estimated.
This photograph seems to show Lidskalnin using a chain hoist on a tripod structure to lift the coral blocks. Indeed, many people who knew Ed Lidskalnin believe he moved those blocks with simple, conventional tools, though no one actually saw him work.
In order to prove the methods of construction that Lidskalnin used, we'd have to replicate the more difficult aspects of the work. Lidskalnin might have been able to hoist the 6-ton blocks for the wall with conventional mechanical tools. But that does not explain how he raised the 23-ton obelisk, or especially this 30-ton block in this wall, all by himself and only with a 10-ton chain hoist.
One of the most amazing aspects of this mystery is its complete accessibility. The castle is, after all, open to the public. So has anyone ever tried to move any of Lidskалnin's structures with conventional tools? Or tried to figure out how many people would be needed to do the job?
one of Ed's most remarkable works is the 9-ton door. It's so perfectly balanced on an all-mill shaft that incredibly it will open to the push of one finger. In order to repair the door in 1986, Coral Castle had to hire a 6-man crew with a 20-ton crane to move the door and make the needed repairs.
And after the repair, the door was no longer as perfectly balanced and positioned as when Lidskалнин constructed and placed it by himself.
So how did Lidskалнин do it? And just how much did Lidskалнин want the world to know? Can we discover any clues to his secret building methods in the papers and booklets he wrote?
In his booklet on magnetic current, Lidskалнин said that all matter consisted of individual magnets. He believed that magnets from the middle of the Earth attracting objects containing both North and South Pole magnets cause gravity.
Is it possible that Lidskалнин somehow figured out how to turn off gravity using his unconventional ideas about the nature of all matter? But isn't a world without the law of gravity really an impossibility?
I was baffled about the nature of anti-gravity until a colleague asked me to describe it. I said that it was a means by which objects could be lifted, and then I realized that we were already applying anti-gravitational techniques in our everyday life. Like getting out of bed in the morning, or an airplane, rocket and forklift are all devices to overcome gravity. So I asked myself, what if there's no such thing as gravity? If, as Lidskалнин claimed, all things, all matter consists of individual magnets, could the known properties of magnetism explain gravity? Then I began to speculate that Lidskалнин was creating anti-gravity by simply flipping the magnetic poles in his coral blocks so they would match and therefore repel the magnetic polarity of the Earth. The flywheel in Lidskалнин's tool shop consists of bar magnets set in cement. It is mounted on a 4th-row camshaft. But this photo of Lidskалнин with his hand on the crank may not represent the entire operation. It is possible that there was a reciprocating engine attached to the crankshaft so that Ed could walk away and leave the flywheel running. I believe also that it became part of a radio transmitter. This photo of Ed Lidskалнин working shows him lifting a coral stone with his chain hoist on a wooden tripod. The tripod was made of old telephone poles with a small wooden box on top. Leading out of the box was a wire cable that goes down towards the ground. What was in the box is of course a mystery, but I speculate that it contained radio tuners such as those found in his tool shed. In this other photo, Ed is standing on the crossbars of the tripod. We can see that steps go up one of the poles to the small box. So it seems Lidskалнин needed access to the box while he was working, perhaps to adjust the tuners.
magnets, flywheels, reciprocating engines, transformers, tripods with mysterious boxes, and radio tuners. How do the pieces of this puzzle fit together? And could the answer be a way to defy gravity and a spectacular end to the energy crisis? With rolling blackouts and gas prices skyrocketing at the pumps, you won't want to miss what comes next. According to reports, whenever someone came up to the castle and rang the correct number of times to gain entrance, Lidskалнин would cover up his tools before coming out to talk to the person. Why was Lidskалнин so secretive about how he moved the huge coral stones? People also said he had a sixth sense to detect if someone was secretly watching, and he would immediately stop working and simply putter around.
There is a mindset called the Italian tile layer syndrome. These renowned tilers would go all over the world laying tile for important buildings and people. No one was allowed to watch them because they were protecting their trade secrets. I believe that Lidskалнин had this kind of mindset.
Was Ed Lidskалнин so secretive about his construction methods and about himself that he even used a hidden code in his writings?
Lidskалнин self-published this curious little book called A Book in Every Home. Following each page, he left a blank page with this explanation. Reader, if for any reason you do not like the things I say in this little book, I left just as much space as I use so you can write your own opinion opposite it and see if you can do better. It's possible that he left the empty space for the reader to decipher a code hidden in metaphors in his book. The code may ultimately reveal how he built the Coral Castle. The book also talks about family life, Sweet 16, and how to raise boys and girls. One curious sentence says, "Don't raise girls too big by overfeeding them." Could raising girls be a metaphor for raising a stone? In Lidskалнин's writings on magnetic current, he suggests a series of experiments using magnets. Perhaps these experiments are an important key to understanding how Lidskалнин, using anti-gravity, moved coral blocks.
That Ed's secrets lie hidden in code and metaphors in his writing is an intriguing possibility. But can we look anywhere else for evidence that Ed really figured out how to eliminate or minimize the effects of gravity? Did some neighbors penetrate the wall of secrecy and actually catch Ed?
One legend is that there were some children spying on Ed undetected and saw him floating coral blocks in the air like hydrogen balloons.
There are additional reported incidents. In 1936, Lidskалнин decided to move his original castle in Florida City, Ed called it Rockgate, to Homestead, reportedly to escape the threat to his privacy from a subdivision to be built nearby. He dismantled the castle and moved it, stone by stone, to Homestead, where it is today. For the first and only time, Lidskалнин sought help with the move.
Ed Lidskалнин hired a tractor to pull the chassis of an old truck that he had. He had the driver leave the empty truck and come back the following morning to haul the full load of heavy coral stone to Homestead. But once the driver came back unexpectedly after only 30 minutes. To his amazement, he found that the truck was already loaded down with several huge blocks of coral. The driver remembered,
"It was impossible to have stacked those gigantic blocks in under 30 minutes, even with a steam-powered derrick. And Ed had no equipment, just a simple tackle and chain hoist. Yet there they were, piled like cordwood."
When the truck moved the 23-ton obelisk, Lidskалнин told the driver that he would have it raised in position by the following morning. And indeed, when the driver returned the following morning, the obelisk was raised.
But why did Lidskалнин undertake the daunting task of moving the entire castle 10 miles from Atlantic City to Homestead, Florida? Was there a reason besides the prospect of a housing development close to the castle? And does the actual location of the castle itself contribute to its mystery? Some researchers believe that there is an energy grid that is formed around the entire Earth, an invisible pattern of energy lines that concentrate points of electromagnetic energy where the lines intersect. Did Lidskалнин somehow learn the secrets of this energy grid? And is Coral Castle a PowerPoint?
I've heard that Ed had a map of the magnetic energy points of the Earth. Ray Stoner, in his book, The Enigma of Coral Castle, suggests that Lidskалнин moved the original castle to Homestead not because of an encroaching housing development, but because a surveying error misplaced the original castle 10 miles from the energy grid.
Captain Bruce Cathy, a commercial pilot and author, is considered the world's leading authority on the energy grid.
I've just recently been running the given position of coral castles through my computer using the computer program that we've developed, and I found that there is a definite link with gravitational forces, and also a link there with the Earth's magnetic field. So it's obvious that Ed definitely knew something about Einstein's E equals mc squared and the unified fields. He was well ahead of what everybody thought he was. He wasn't dumb. He knew something.
There are other well-known anomalies and monuments on this energy grid, including Stonehenge on the Salisbury Plain in England and the pyramids and the Sphinx on the Giza Plateau. Interestingly, many questions surround the construction of these huge monuments and how they were built with the primitive technology of ancient times. Did Ed Lidskалнин really understand how to use this so-called energy grid? And is it even possible to speculate on how Lidskалнин used his unconventional view of matter and magnets to achieve anti-gravity?
Here is my idea of how Lidskалнин flipped the magnets in his coral blocks and achieved anti-gravity. I believe Lidskалнин lifted a coral stone with a chain hoist, just enough to get the wire cable, coming from the small box on the tripod, wrapped around the stone's center. Then he went back to the tool shed and he cranked the flywheel and kept it turning with the reciprocating engine. The flywheel transmitted a frequency to the small box on the tripod. The tuners in the box converted the frequency into an electromagnetic field around the coral block, thus flipping the magnetic pole in the coral and neutralizing its weight. As yet, there is no working model based on my theory on how Lidskалнин easily moved his stones, but the day when that can be demonstrated is close.
Perhaps some oddities reported about Lidskалнин do make sense. What about the neighbors who reported hearing Lidskалнин singing to the stones?
The singing they heard might very well have been the sounds of frequencies coming from the flywheel and the box on top of the tripod as he moved huge blocks.
There are a number of tantalizing clues. For example, here in Ed's tool shed are bottles wound with copper wire and a variety of radio tuners. What could be the significance of these objects?
I believe Lidskалнин was experimenting to find the frequencies that would work to flip the magnets in the block, and perhaps each block had a different resonant frequency.
If all of this, or if any of this is possible, perhaps even some of the structures constructed by Ed Lidskалнин at Coral Castle take on a new significance. For example, isn't it going just a bit far to create a separate room for the punishment of children you don't know if you'll ever have?
I discovered that Ed's repentance corner is like a dead sound chamber, where perhaps he listened to different frequencies on his radio tuners.
Ed Lidskалнин's construction of Coral Castle seems to elude any explanation based on known science and conventional tools. But what if we open our minds just a little bit? What if it really is possible to eliminate or greatly lessen the effect of gravity? What would the world look and be like with a new science and Ed Lidskалнин's tools? Could it help explain some mysteries from our past?
Lidskалнин would appreciate that I'm here at the Florida table, cut into the shape of the state of Florida. He envisioned sitting here with the governor of Florida, along with the legislature, sitting in the rocking chairs discussing important matters. If anti-gravity is the answer to Lidskалнин's construction of Coral Castle, it will be possible to finally know how Stonehenge, the Sphinx, and the Great Pyramid, and other ancient monuments were constructed, all unexplained by the primitive technology of their times. My research shows that the Great Pyramid was a geomechanical power plant that responded sympathetically with the Earth's vibrations, converting that energy into electricity. The Egyptians used the same principles of anti-gravity that Ed Lidskалнин understood and created an unlimited source of clean energy. The Great Pyramid and other ancient monuments were constructed, all unexplained by the primitive technology of their times. My research shows that the Great Pyramid was a geomechanical power plant that responded sympathetically with the Earth's vibrations, converting that energy into electricity. The Egyptians used the same principles of anti-gravity that Ed Lidskalnin understood and created an unlimited source of clean energy.
Could we be talking about an end to the current energy crisis? And an end to rapidly escalating gas prices at the pump? And electric rates at home? Can we stop building costly new power generating plants?
There is a small group of scientists in the world that have all this knowledge, and they're using it. We're told in recent days that there's an energy crisis. They're having problems with creating new energy sources. Well, that's not true. The whole of the gravity field is energy, and it'll never run out. Now, all these new energy systems, all you'll have in a house will be an antenna on the roof, a small box full of electrical circuits hanging on the wall somewhere or in a cupboard, and you've got free power. That's all you need. This was done way back in 1931 by Tesla, Nikola Tesla. He took the motor out of a Pierce Arrow car, put one of his electric motors in it, ran a car with the same method. He had approximately about 6 foot of aerial sticking at the back of the car. He had a small box under the dashboard full of electric circuits and a few valves, and he was getting 90 miles an hour out of the thing. Now, I think we can boil this all down to saying that we could have a future with a world with unlimited energy available and with no pollution. And to think now, a man like Ed Lidskalnin, just a small guy like he was, 5 foot tall, and he knew the secrets of anti-gravity. Now, how did he do it? If he can do it, and otherwise fairly uneducated, what would happen if they taught this in our universities?
If the dream of a pollution-free world seems like nothing more than a wild fantasy, consider this. A group calling themselves the International Tesla Electric Company is today offering people free electricity to be generated on their own property by a new type of generator that uses the power of magnets. But how did Ed Lidskalnin, a man with only a 4th grade education, come to understand the most complex secrets of the universe?
On Saturday night, Ed would ride his bike into town, dressed in his best clothes. He sat on his bike and watched the people, studying the personalities of those who came by.
And with equal care, he relentlessly observed natural phenomena.
Millions of people all over the world have been fooled, including myself, by wrong drawings in astronomy books in showing how the Earth's yearly pass around the Sun causes summer and winter. In fact, the drawings are wrong. I was lucky. I made a rock telescope and a rock sundial, and they de-fooled me. Now I know the right path the Earth follows. The scientists should come to Rock Gate, Homestead, Florida, and have a good look at the new drawing, the telescope, and the sundial, and then notice how they would affect science.
And he also observed nature with incredible detail.
This is for biologists. I can see chromosomes without a microscope. To see, I close my eyes and then I open one eye just a little to look at the blue sky. Then I can see chains of beads floating in the liquid in my eye.
Was it simply Ed Lidskalnin's quiet observation of the world that facilitated his understanding and discoveries about the world? Did he learn his secrets from the study of ancient Egypt? Is all matter composed of magnetism, as Lidskalnin claimed? And can scientists today alter the polarity of magnets to nullify the pull of gravity? Could it be that ultimately the answer is in an invitation to explore and study things for ourselves? Ed's sign at the castle boldly warns visitors, you will be seeing unusual accomplishments. That is certainly the case. On November 7, 1951, Ed Lidskalnin took a bus to Jackson Memorial Hospital, leaving a sign at the castle, "We'll be right back." A month later, he died quietly in his sleep from cancer. Unfortunately, Ed died without revealing his secrets. The mystery of his spectacular coral castle remains unexplained.